We want to make something truly epic for the new Lord of the Rings Tales of Middle-earth release. If you couldn't tell from my accent, I'm from New Zealand. Here, Lord of the Rings is a national treasure, so I just had to make something for this new set. The film and the lore just holds a really special place in my heart, and I wanted to do it justice. When I saw Bilbo Birthday Celebrant, I thought, this is the commander for me. I love his life gain, food token effect, and how cool would it be to have a deck with all my favourite hobbits in it. Last year I was lucky enough to visit the Hobbiton set, and it was absolutely stunning. It was one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. This gave me all the inspiration I needed to try and bring a slice of the Shire to the tabletop every time I play my halfling deck. I want to recreate the most iconic hobbit hole of them all, Bag End, as my commander zone. I started by designing the facade in CAD. I wanted to make sure the iconic green door was the focal point of the build. I designed it so that when you open the door, my commander will be there greeting you. I also made sure to include enough space for my deck to be stored in the hills. I can only take the design so far on the computer, as I will have to sculpt the rolling hills of the Shire by hand. This will be a challenge, but I'm sure I can create something that looks amazing. I decided to build the deck holder first. I began by cutting out the templates I created from the CAD model. These are available on our website. I always find a template useful as it is really easy to get your measurements wrong without one. Alternatively, a laser cutter is great, but that is a bit out of my budget unfortunately. Hot tip, when using a hot glue gun I find it really helpful if you plug it in. I tried to make sure I didn't get any glue on the inside so that it didn't snag or interfere with my cards. The outside doesn't matter since it will be covered by hills in the end. Here you can see how my deck and commander fit nicely into the holder. Now we begin making the facade of Bag End. The dotted line on the template represents that I should not cut right through the XPS foam, just score it. Cutting circles with a blade was tricky. A hot wire cutter would have been much better, but unfortunately I don't have one. When model making, it pays to just be as creative as you can with the tools that are available to you. When cutting some of the foam board shapes, I did exactly what I was hoping to avoid, which is tearing the foam instead of cutting it. To fix this, I had to use some polyfill to fill the gaps. Then I sanded it smooth once it had dried. These are parts of the wooden columns that are made by sandwiching foam between two bits of cardboard. I then clamped this together using my Marcy deck. Remember what I said about using tools that you have available? I compressed the XPS foam to create the brickwork around the windows and door so they would sit proud of the rest of the wall. I then used a knife and a small file to create the individual brick pattern. I then used the old tinfoil trick to texture the wall. Follow the link in the corner if you want to see a video where I go into a bit more detail about this trick. This is Dave the Cat. He likes to help out where he can. Which is nowhere really. For the windows, I cut up a bit of transparent plastic to act as the glass, cardboard as the frame, and matchsticks as the cross members, or whatever those bits that divide up a window are called. This was very small fiddly work, but I love doing these little details. I think they add so much. As for the door, I cut out 2 circles. I sliced one of them up into teeny tiny planks, and then I mounted these onto the other door to create the wood texture I was after. Creating the patio overhang was tricky because I had to bend the foam board to match the curve of the roofline. I did this by cutting slices into the foam board. This makes it really easy to bend around a curve. I then hot glued it in place. I then used polyfill to fill the gaps, which I will sand back later once it's dry. Then I stuck the columns in place, and now it was looking pretty good and ready for some paint. First I undercoated the whole facade brown, then I created the wood texture by layering up shades of brown and painting in one direction to emulate the look of wood grain. You might be asking why am I painting now so early in the build process? I decided to do this because I knew that once I built the hills around Bag End, it would be really tricky to paint certain areas. I used a burgundy on the brickwork using slightly different shades to create variation. I painted the windows a timber colour and popped them into place. Then I stuck the deck holder onto the facade, and now we're ready to start making the rolling hills of the Shire. I'm a bit nervous about this step because I haven't really done anything like this before. I also have to be careful that the hill looks natural, but also isn't too gentle of a slope that I end up making the command zone take up the whole table. I will have to settle for half the table. While I'm constructing this landscape, I would like to ask for a massive favour. If you could subscribe, share and like to help me out, that would be amazing. It would also be great if you could let me know in the comments what kind of projects you would like to see in the future. Deck boxes, playmats, command zones, or whatever you think. I try to read all your feedback, so I really appreciate it. Let's get back to it. I used a rasp to smooth out the contours of the hill. This creates a lot of mess, so if you can ask someone to vacuum up as you go, that is really helpful. Then I trimmed off the excess MDF board, now I knew where the hill was going to be. I made a removable section of the hill to act as a lid for my deck box, so that I still have easy access to my cards. I used yellow XPS foam in some areas because I knew that I wanted to sculpt pavers into this section, and the XPS foam is much better than polystyrene for this. Just checking that the steps are the right scale for Hobbit legs. I used plaster of Paris to smooth out the foam hills and seal it for the painting step. I haven't used plaster of Paris for years, so I had to play around a bit to get the right consistency so that it doesn't just run off the hills. When I was happy with the finish, I let it dry for a few hours. So once it was dry, the first thing I did was paint the backside black, just to tidy it up a bit. And then I painted all the stone areas a mid-grey colour. I painted all the dirt brown, but later down the track I found that to be a mistake, so ignore that, and I'll explain why in a second. I did a black wash on the stone areas, and then I hit them with a dry brush to bring out all the details I had carved in. I didn't need to be too precious about this step because I knew a lot of this would be obscured by the foliage later in the build. I did a test of the flock over brown paint that you can see on the left. I felt it looked too much like dead grass. With the sample on the right, I undercoated with green paint, and I really wanted the grass to be that vibrant green that I remember from my trip, so I decided to paint over the brown. I am really excited about this step. I have never tried creating foliage on this scale before, so it should be a really great challenge. So I started by applying a base layer of flock and static grass to cover everywhere I painted green. It was surprisingly tricky to get it to stick to the vertical areas of bag end. I think a static grass applicator would have been really helpful here, but unfortunately I do not have one. Because I am based in New Zealand, I have found it surprisingly challenging to get hobby supplies. I carefully planted some ferns in the areas that would naturally get less light, like under the eaves. Then I began placing tufts and various colours around the porch, trying to make it look as natural as possible. I was trying to channel my inner Samwise, tending to the gardens as carefully as possible. I find there is no right or wrong way to do this. I just try to build up the layers of colours and textures until things look the way that I want them to. I tried my best to hide the seam of the removable lid for the deck storage area. These final little details are my favourite part of any project. Once you've done the hard work of getting to this point, these extra little things can really elevate the build. I sculpted a couple of pots out of air drying clay that I picked up from the hobby store. Online I saw a picture of Bag End with a comically large pumpkin on the front porch, and I thought I just have to make that. I sculpted that out of clay as well, and then painted it a vibrant orange. Since I have made the pumpkin, I need to make a wheelbarrow so Bilbo can carry this bad boy around. I made the barrow by cutting up popsicle sticks and a bit of balsa wood, and then staining it with a brown wash. I mounted them to the porch with PVA glue and tried to make them look as natural as possible. I put some coloured tufts in the pots to make it look like Bilbo was growing some flowers in there. I also whipped up a little birdhouse using the same techniques. Our new ring design was the perfect final touch for my Bilbo deck. We have an artwork builder on our website so you can design a bespoke armor plate that's perfect for your commander. I will put a link in the description below. And here is the final result. I am really happy with how it turned out. I love the little narrative features, like when you arrive at game night you can retrieve your deck from inside the hill. And when you play Bilbo, it's like he's coming out to party with the rest of the Shire folk for his 111th birthday. That's it for this one. Thanks for watching. Please let me know what you would like me to do next in the comments. See you next time.